Yes, my name is Richard Kastelein. I'm a Dutch-Canadian entrepreneur, and I am an analyst and supplier in the initial coin offering industry globally. So I work with ICOs and innovation companies working in the blockchain space. Well, essentially I was here to talk about blockchain and banking and new ways of raising innovation finance, the threats and the opportunities in the banking industry in terms of how these new technologies, particularly around blockchain, could impact their own industries, for example. But I also, on the bright side, talked about some of the positive ways these new technologies are being used for other startups and other projects. So from banking for the bankless, and the idea of using blockchain to reduce the cost of transactions, financial transactions, to near zero, something that the financial industry doesn't have currently. Well, that really changes the game in terms of remittance services from people working in the UK and sending money back to India or to Nigeria or whatever may be the case. So there's a huge market there, for instance, that blockchain can really provide, and these new cryptocurrencies can provide new ways of tackling these problems, where the costs are very high currently to send money home, whether you're doing it through Western Union or taking a bank a week or so on. I think that probably the key takeaway for most of the people was enlightening them to actually how big the movement is and how probably it's not as corrupt as they think it is, because ICOs and the blockchain and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies often get a bad kind of reputation, feeling, vibe with people. And I think I clarified a lot by showing them projects that I'm working on that have come across my desk, or that friends of mine are working on that are really, really cool and really revolutionary. Whether I'm working with Francis Ford Coppola and his team at American Zoetrope, his son Roman, on a film project to create a new cryptocurrency and community around independent film funding, to a music community in Korea where I'm working with an ex-Apple advisor and chief advisor to Steve Jobs on iTunes. Just fantastic people I'm working with on taking blockchain technology and initial coin offering concepts to raise money to fund new innovative ideas. And this is really about creating liquidity from the bottom up. So we're creating new wealth and new money from communities of people, not coming from banks and central banks downwards, but this is kind of new wealth being created in a very unique way that the world has never seen before. Well, the banking industry has had a really hard time, and I think the main problem is because Bitcoin itself is not fast enough and doesn't have the scalability to handle the level of transactions that need to be done on a global scale with someone like Visa or MasterCard. We're talking like thousands of transactions per second. So these are the main issues that we're facing in our industries. How can we create an architecture, a blockchain architecture that can scale and handle transactions at that level? Plus you got to look, the inherent value of blockchain is actually in getting rid of the middlemen. So in effect, are we hurting bankers by actually making them obsolete perhaps in some ways? When you have smart contracts that can do insurance, and you have smart contracts that can manage mortgages, and you have smart contracts that can handle loans, and you have smart contracts that can do all these different things that normally humans do, what kind of impact does that have on a banking industry that's already seeing their high street brick and mortar operations being reduced, to seeing pressure from the young mobile companies, mobile bankers coming in. I mean, now they're facing another layer of complexity and challenges in seeing this new kind of threat, but also an opportunity. So Ripple, there's some great projects that are working with the bankers to try and help them out. There's R3, which is a group of 80 different bankers globally that are trying to work together to take the best of blockchain and yet still keep relevance in an industry that's changing very rapidly. Well, I have to say Ripple has been, Ripple is doing very well, not only as a cryptocurrency and its valuation, but its technology itself and the people behind it that are, that's where it's getting the scalability issue solved. And the balance between the advantages of a public blockchain, which has no privacy, and the needs of a banking community which needs privacy and needs security and needs regulatory, there's so many regulations around banking that it takes a long time to move the bar. So a lot of people have to sign off on something for something to change. So it's inherently, it doesn't move that quickly. But that's not necessarily good for the bankers, because a lot of these startups don't have to adhere to the same rules as the bankers. So suddenly they're under a different kind of regulatory pressure than, actually no pressure for some of the startups. Whereas, the bankers themselves are having to still cross their T's and dot their I's and make sure everything's in order as incumbents, but the newer players are maybe not having to go through as many loopholes or jump so many ropes or whatever to get through. So.